I was sitting in the car the other day, I was listening to the radio, and they started talking about comparisons to Harry Sheezel, and it got me thinking, who in the 2024 draft crop has similarities to Harry Sheezel? We know the impact that Sheezel's had at AFL level, averaged 27 disposals in his debut season. He won the Rising Star. He won North Melbourne's best and fairest as a first-year player, and I know North are a bottom of the ladder kind of side, but that is just crazily impressive. So who can have that sort of trajectory to the AFL level? Who can feel so much at home like Sheezel did? I've been doing some thinking, and I'm going to make a case today that Murphy Reid could be the next Harry Sheezel. On the surface, they both played for the Sandringham Dragons, they both played for Vic Metro. Statistically, they don't share a lot of similarities, and that's partly because of the way that they were deployed in their under-18 level. We'll take a look at Sheezel, as he's had time to develop at the AFL level, but in his Coates League season, he was able to play 14 games. He didn't have school commitments. He averaged 19.3 disposals and 2.6 goals per game. Now, he split that time really interestingly. He played some games full-time midfielder where he kicked less goals and had more disposals, and he played games where he was parked inside forward 50 where he had less disposals and more goals. His national championships was a little bit down on those numbers, but mainly because he played as a pure forward. So he had 14.5 disposals and 2 goals per game. So pretty good numbers there for a small forward. Murphy Reid only played the 3 games at Coates Talent League level. He's averaged 24 disposals and 0.8 goals. So almost a goal a game at Coates Talent League level, but been able to find the football. He's one that's really grown into that this season. As we, if we do a comparison, Sheezel was a really high prodigy type talent, through the season. He played in the AFL Academy side, where Murphy Reid sort of been more of a bolter, I would say, coming through the national championships. I don't think anyone expected what he produced in those champs. In his champs, talking about that, he played 4 games, 24.5 disposals and 1 goal per game. So his numbers are even better at the national championships level than they have been at Coates League. But I guess the takeaways from the stats are that we can't really read anything too much into that because they play quite different roles. So it's not like you're going, they both average 25 touches and 2 goals, so we can make any deductions from that. Pretty different. And what I want to talk about mostly in this video with Murphy Reid and Harry Sheezel is the aesthetics of it. So the less tangible things, but the way that they move across the field, the commonalities that they have with their athletic profile, because they don't have many athletic attributes that you would really write home about. But what they do is they make up for that with their ability to read the game, their ability to get out of traffic and be thinking 2 to 3 steps ahead of their opponents at all time. They're out thinking as opposed to out working. So I want to start with the kicking, because I think the kicking is very similar between these two. There's something about the action, there's something about the aesthetics of what they're doing here that gives me similar vibes. It's also about the movement of how they come out of the stoppage here, but I've got a similar situation. The first thing I notice with these two, they're not straight line runners. If you look at someone like a Jason Horne-Francis, he's always looking to run forward and power through the contest. These two are trying to avoid contact most of the time and evade it because they're not quick, they're not super powerful, but if they can get onto the outside and they can, avoid those tackles, they can hit up with their beautiful disposal. And I want to talk about the disposal because this segment is about the kicking. There's not a ton of penetration or, revolutions on the ball when they kick the footy. I think if you were like a biomechanist specialist in kicking, I'm definitely not that. You would look at the kicking and go, okay, it's not as powerful as it could be. It doesn't have the revolutions. They don't keep it quite as low as some of those other players like a, McKercher or a Goulden. They get that really high leg kickback that goes, more than 45 degrees, goes right up, and then they snap it back really quickly. With Reid and Sheezel, it's more of a sort of cumbersome, laconic sort of slow movement that they do. They're sort of feeling the ball. The hand-to-foot motion is quite slow, but the decision is always really, really sound. They put the ball into space, and they're reading the game steps ahead, and that makes the kick better than what it actually is in reality, if that makes any sense here. So here's Sheezel coming out of the stoppage. You see him, there's not a lot of speed there, but he finds the space, he runs into it, and it's just such a beautiful, nice action to watch. It's like the ball, he's just so comfortable with the football in his hand. He sort of has a bit of a lean back there. I mentioned the laconic nature of it. There's not a lot of follow through, but he gets the job done. He hits the target, retains the ball, and he's still moving forward with the disposal. Like, he's not looking to go for the handball on the outside. Here's Reed, similar thing, sort of coming out of the stoppage. They don't burst out and break tackles, but they find the space where it is available to them, works into it, and then just a nice lean, almost a little skip there from Reed. Almost both feet come off the ground. It's a short swing back of the leg, little pitching wedge here. And Murphy Reed does that quite a bit. There's a lot of balls that loop, they go high into the air, but he's made the decision is sound enough that it won't get intercepted by a defender. There's the side-by-side, and here's another one of Sheezel sort of running through, just with that nice little action. The little skip hits up Larky there inside forward 50. Reed again, it's laid back, isn't it? It's just a really, really sort of laid back kick, but it's a floater. That ball is an absolute floater. It's a helicopter, but he's given it just the right amount of weight that the forward can come through and mark it. Astonishing stuff. It's really interesting to look at those sort of things, but there's something intangible about the movement of both players there. They're so comfortable with the ball in their hand, and they feel it onto the foot really well. And it's like I said, the biomechanics are probably not that sound. If a kicking expert kind of had a look at it, they probably wouldn't be super impressed. But you know, feel for the game. What can I say? Next up is a bit of their stoppage work, and I guess that just comes, people talk about stoppage work and they talk about, you know, ability to work in a phone box and all of those sorts of things. If you just take it in isolation, it looks like they just come through and everybody runs away from them. Reality is there's some subtle movement in there. There's the giving the indication that they're going to go one way here. Reed sort of comes through and then he doubles back, and you've got to have pretty good lateral movement, pretty good agility to be able to do that. He sort of comes through its pace, does the little, what would you call that? It's a 270-degree turn, sort of flips back in. He's got guys right around him here in Ashcroft and Jaden Newham both calling for the ball in short with a handball. And a lot of players would come out of the contest. They'd get a little bit shaken. He doesn't. He draws 3 defenders to him there if I freeze frame it. And just one of his nice little dainty kicks. He comes out, throws that one out, and Vic Metro are out there through Lennox Hoffman. Here he is again, the little sidestep. It doesn't look like much. It's really subtle, but just that ability to be able to change direction. This game's wet too, so harder to change direction. Does that nicely, sells candy to the defender, and then hits it up. Here's Sheezel, look at that. Look at that lateral movement. And I think that's a part of it. If you talk about the ball in hand, and then you talk about the lateral movement, the way that they glide across the field and that kicking action, they're starting to look really, really similar. Here's Sheezel again, getting out of congestion. And this one's more on the smarts. It's not something that's aesthetically similar, but you can just see that they're, 360 sort of understanding of the game. They've got the eyes in the back of the head, the sixth sense for the game. They're able to release these handballs when they are tackled, when they are in traffic, and there's nothing else they can do. There's one from Murphy Reed where he gets it out to Rechko. Doesn't even have to break stride, Rechko. There's Sheezel, the complete look away. Shows their peripheral vision too, that they've seen this seconds before, and then when it plays out, they can release it. There's Sheezel again. And Reed caught up heavily in the boundary, nowhere to go, but he's able to release a teammate and they get out, pretty much scot-free. This third thing I want to talk about here, it's, again, I know I've used the word intangible quite a lot in this, but there is something that these two players do when they have the ball, that the ball almost seems to stick to them. And I'd use I think of examples, when you're playing FIFA back in the day and you're running the ball forward with like a Lionel Messi, and the ball sort of sticks to the foot of the player because of his skill level is so high, his ball control is so high. Actually, I remember listening to a podcast on the Dacos brothers, and they were talking about this. They were talking about how often as kids they would have the ball in their hand and they'd just be playing with it, whether it was inside or out in the park or whatever. They always had a ball in their hand, and you can see that in the way that they play. You can't really show an example of it, if that makes sense, but it's there. You can see the creativity and the artistry with the ball because they've had it in their hands. They've developed it as they were growing up, and I think Reed and Sheezel both have this quality as well. And I'll show a few examples here, like this one with Reed. He's tackled, he ends up losing the ball here, but he's able to keep the ball in his possession, just sort of tapping it into himself. He keeps it there, and the reason that he keeps it there in that situation is he doesn't want to let the ball go to the outside to those South Australian players, so he keeps it inside the contest so that Vic Metro can either force a stoppage or, take the ball out themselves. Here's some of his work here where it's so close. I reckon most players in this situation would release the ball. So he's in the pocket and he's gone so close to releasing that ball, but then at the last minute, he's able to pull it back and the ball somehow sticks to his hand. It's so far in control of that ball that he's not going to screw it up. And this one here is just disgusting, this pickup. Like, I'll freeze framed it there. Look at that. That ball is on its end, pretty much. Collects, dishes the handball off. It doesn't even look like much has happened there. And, Sheezel doing the same sorts of things here. The little soccer out in front. The ball almost sticking to his foot there. Here's just the one-handed grab. Turns inside, again showing that lateral movement that we talked about earlier. And Reid there again, in wet conditions in the contest when nobody could handle it. That was a bar of soap in that game. He's able to do that and get out as well. So both of these players have an almost innate understanding of the game and innate ball control that is not really teachable for someone that just has an athletic profile. They have such a highly developed football skill set that they can do these sorts of things. And players with that level of IQ and footy IQ seem to be able to hit the scoreboard more often than the players that can't, because they have a nous and they have an ability to be able to work in the congestion of a forward line that has mass traffic. Here's Sheezel, turns inside out and snaps around on the left boot. Like, what a goal from absolutely nothing. Forward half stoppage. This one's just off a pack, but there's bodies absolutely everywhere. Sheezel finds the gap, kicks the goal. Here's Reid. This one a little bit more fortuitous than anything else, but Anderson gets a stoppage. He's crept forward where he knows the ball will go. Just smart, just good football intelligence. And here's a beautiful one where he roves it off the ruck contest from a forward stoppage here. And again, the goal doesn't look that impressive, but just being able to spin there, turn his body towards goal and then not pull the kick too far or not enough and just hit it right, have the sense to know where the goals are and snap it around with that velocity, just amazing, really. And while we're on the forward stoppage stuff, I will kind of throw in here that these two players, while they do share so many similarities like that, they do also have some differences. And I think the forward 50 craft is where Sheezel really starts to separate himself. He did that in his draft year as well. He separated himself from the other generic run-of-the-mill midfielders. I think Murphy Reid's done that a little bit this season too, but not to the level of Sheezel, and I'm going to explain why. This is a clip of Murphy Reid running towards goal. Now, he's finished the opponent there, he's got away, he's got the space, he's running towards the boundary line, but he cuts back in here. Now, he cuts back in because he does not want to use his left foot. He's going at the goal, but the angle has just become almost impossible from this, and he sprays it, kicks it too skinny, and it goes out of bounds on the full. Now, Harry Sheezel wouldn't have had this same problem because Harry Sheezel was burying goals on both sides of his body. Off one step, he had just as much power in his left foot. He actually looks pretty much ambidextrous if you watch him play. Have a look at some of these goals that he was able to kick in his under 18 year, the power off that left boot. And what it does when you have that both sides ability, it opens up the field so much for you. So I showed you that shot earlier where he sort of cut inside. He used his lateral movement to come back inside the ground. You would probably think a player like a Murphy Reid would actually go to the outside there. So he limits, essentially half of the field with that, wherever the contest is. He can't go to that side because he's not going to be able to get out, or he's going to have to give a suboptimal option like a handball where he could have kicked inside, for example. The other big elephant in the room with these two is the height. So Sheezel has an extra 5 centimetres on Reid, sitting at 185, while Reid sits at 180 centimetres. Again, not a big deal, but they move pretty similar, and Sheezel having that extra 5 centimetres of height makes him a better marking target inside forward 50. Reid's pretty good at finding space inside forward 50 when the ball's coming in, and he showed that. He's marked a few balls throughout the national championships and kicked goals from that. But Sheezel was able to take contested marks. He's deceptively good in the air. That's why he worked really well as an interceptor for North Melbourne in his first season as well. And Reid just doesn't quite have that skill, and it cuts down his scoring options quite significantly. Probably if there was one area that I would say Reid is slightly better is just a little bit of that speed. So when he does come out of the stoppage, he does have a little bit more pace. We saw him in that previous clip there. He was able to kind of burn that defender running. I think he has a little bit more of an extra step of pace than Sheezel had, who was quite slow over the first 20, but makes up for that with the things that we've talked about. Now, look, I asked the question at the beginning of the video, can Murphy Reid have the same impact as Harry Sheezel at AFL level? That's the real question here. And While I don't think he has all of the skills that Sheezel had, and we look at where Sheezel was drafted, in the AFL Academy side, like I mentioned, Sheezel went at 3 in the draft, and Murphy Reed's probably more looking at somewhere between 5 and 15, and it's probably because of some of those deficiencies that he has. But Murphy Reed could come in and have an instant impact for an AFL club. I think especially if he does a Sheezel and he goes to one of the lower end teams on the ladder, he can come in, they can slot him in across half back or, play a bit of midfield time, however they want to use him, and he's going to be able to find the football because he's such an intelligent player. I think if there's one thing that you want to take away from this video is that these two players are absolute ballers. They have a football brain, and that's what sets them apart from other players. Murphy Reed has a few little deficiencies that Sheezel has covered. He's worked so hard to get to that level, and that's really set him apart and why he's been so successful at AFL level. Murphy Reed still has a little way to go there, but he's an absolute baller. He's got the footy brain to go with it, the footy IQ. Sheezel certainly has more weapons, and that's why he went pick 3 in the draft, but there are a lot of similarities around these players. And I'm just excited to see how Murphy Reed does adapt to the AFL level. The next few months are going to be big for him. We've got the Coates Talent League finals coming up, and then obviously, the draft combine, the draft. I'm so intrigued where he's going to end up, but he certainly had a bolter season. I don't think anyone at the start of the season would have expected him to be in the top 10. So loving his season. I'm also a big Sheezel fan. One thing making this video, a big takeaway from it was actually watching Sheezel really, really closely with some of the clips that I had to do and that sort of thing. And you just realize some of the subtle details that he has in his game that set him apart. So absolutely loved that. Thanks everyone for watching the video. If you agree or disagree or want to, chuck a comment down below. Maybe you already had this thought that he was a bit similar to Sheezel. So let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.